You don't give a fuck when you land or not, just let him go. Don't worry about you, you're gonna be a shitty fight, but you gotta let punches go. Last round. You can't wait until they get, if you miss it, bang, go right back. And don't take 30 seconds to start another punch.
Alexander, I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody like me. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw, there's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable.
Look at that combination. And the
I kept telling him he had no punch, he couldn't hit, he's swinging like a sissy, he's missing, let me see your box. I hadn't started dancing yet. A tremendous rotational first round, and Hearns gets hurt. Hearns got stunned. Hackle was stunned early in the round. Great first round. Incredible. Perhaps one of the best in middleweight history.
That black guy, he hits hard.
Fire!
What's going on, boxing folks? It's your host, George Dampier, writer and reporter for RealCombatMedia.com. And there's a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Olympic boxing. Billy Joe Saunders pulling out of the undercard fight with Canelo Álvarez, and also news on that undercard bout. Tyson Fury making things a little more complicated than they need to be, and his rematch with Vladimir Klitschko. And Canelo Álvarez just can't seem to get Golovkin out his mouth. Pause. So, am I missing anything else in the preamp? Well, we'll get to it. But like I said, we got a lot to talk about. For those who are just boxing heads and just looking for any type of boxing action they can find through the week, it's been a little dry through the past week and a half. This past weekend, we had Antonio Margarito fighting the older brother of Canelo Álvarez, who, again, every time I'm told his name, I can forget it within the next 2 minutes. But conveniently named Nutmeg Álvarez. He definitely looked like a serious contender as far as the physique goes, but, Jeff Lacey and a number of other fighters have proved that physique doesn't always translate into skill. And Margarito pulled off was it a split decision? Surprisingly split decision, and what should have been a unanimous decision. Is it C.J. Ross again, showing whose pocket he's in? But yeah, like I said, if you're a boxing head, this really wasn't that much to go off. So, with that being said, the Olympic boxing tournament that's been going on is probably your main go-to, right? So, I just briefly want to go over some of the fighters that really caught my eye. Mainly, there's just two. And these two fighters have already won gold in their respective competitions. Handsome Boy Dusmantov of Uzbekistan, who's a pretty small fighter. These are the really lower weight classes. For those of you who don't know exactly who I'm talking about, Dusmantov is the one who beat the American Nico Hernandez, who eventually went on to win bronze after his semifinal match. And also, the other fighter I wanted to mention was Robinson Conceição, who beat Francis Sofani Umina. And that was the gold medal match. Conceição is, as you can tell by the last name, if you're cultured well enough, not bragging this to say, but yeah, he is the local boy for the Rio Olympics. He's a Brazilian who won gold, who definitely had, I would say his real gold medal match to me was his semi-final match. It was against the Cuban sharpshooter Lazaro Alvarez. Lazaro Alvarez, for you guys who don't know, he was the slick Cuban fighter who beat Carlos Balderas of the United States, and his previous fight going into that bout. The reason I point out these two fighters, Dusmantov and Conceição, is just because I see these guys are pretty damn impressive. Dusmantov in particular, just being an all-around sharp fighter who really had his hands full in his gold medal match against Ubijan Martinez of Colombia, who was also another impressive fighter who I could see doing very well in his professional career if he chooses to do so. And Dusmantov beat Martinez unanimously, and Conceição won unanimously as well. So I just want to give a nice little shout out to Uzbekistan and Brazil for those two fighters who I was extremely impressed with. And also regarding to the Olympic fights, or just Olympic boxing overall, Shakur Stevenson, our American local boy, at least local boy for me, being a Jersey native. Shakur Stevenson comes out of Newark, New Jersey. His fight, he won his first two bouts, and his semifinal match was pretty much canceled, or how would you say? I'm already forgetting the term for when the opponent kind of just drops out and you advance. I'm already kind of drawing a blank. Anyway, the opponent that Stevenson was supposed to be facing was the Russian Vladimir Nikitin, who dropped out because of the cuts that he suffered in his previous bout, which is kind of becoming the most famous bout of the tournament because of the highly controversial decision that came out of it against Ireland's Michael Conlan. And pretty much if you guys are just been under a hole or just not been on social media at all, you guys know that Michael Conlan was the number one ranked fighter coming into this division, and had suffered a unjustly decision loss to Nikitin, who he eventually ended up, after the winner was announced, Michael ended, flipping off, the judges, ripping off his t-shirt and having a profanity-filled interview following the decision, and justly so, because with these fighters, and especially in the amateur rankings, you work your life, you almost dedicate your life to these tournaments, But, like many know, and I'm sure I'm not the first one to say this, that, this is nothing new as far as stopping you from eventually becoming a great fighter or a great professional. You've, seen Evander Holyfield, Roy Jones, Floyd Mayweather. That's not to say that, he could become that one day, but he's, definitely a talented fighter, and I felt he had won the fight just like everybody else, I'm assuming, except these judges. And coming out of this whole controversy now, the AIBA had removed judges out of the Rio competition. However, they did not disclose how many of these judges were removed, and who, of course, they're not going to say who the judges were. But unfortunately, with that being said, the results of the fights that they judged do not change. But I think in the terms of, or at least in the case of Michael Conlan's situation, seeing how, the man he in reality actually beat is now having to bow out of his next match because of the ass whooping he suffered, in his previous bout, I think it would only be fair to have Michael Conlan face Shakur Stevenson. However, that's not going to happen, and like I said, Shakur Stevenson is now already placed into the gold medal match in the bantamweight competition. So, kind of an unfortunate way to advance, but, now all you have to do is win. So yeah, that's that's regarding Olympic boxing so far. So if you guys are, looking for how you can watch these fights, I will post a link in the bottom of this video to pretty much share the site, which I believe is NBCOlympics.com. And I will warn you, through the process of you streaming this fight, they're going to ask you to click what your provider is, because they'll only do it for like a certain 15 minutes. You got to just click who your provider is. They clarify it. Takes like 5 seconds, and then you continue watching. So yeah, I will post that in the description box below. All right, and WBC has pretty much made their ruling regarding Alexander Povetkin and his Macedonian positive drug test that occurred during the approaching weeks of his Deontay Wilder match in May. They considered, as far as the status goes with Alexander Povetkin, he still holds the mandatory position for the WBC champion, but now he is being ordered to fight Bermane Stiverne to continue to hold that interim status. But also through this, he will remain to take a number of drug tests to still comply with the WBC to make sure that everything, at least whatever was in his system at the time, still runs through, and there's no irregularities in his, through his blood, urine, and all that. This really isn't that much of a real topic to me, really. Like, at least not really a hot one. It's just one that kind of just been announced yesterday. Only for the people, I guess, that really wanted to see Alexander Povetkin. I see Povetkin. It sounds like I'm saying Povetkin. I just want to be sure. Alexander Povetkin. They pretty much probably just want to see him being a big cheat. And like I mentioned before, if that were the case, he tested way below the amount that you would even have to even consume it. So meaning that they through the ruling of at least this big document that was released by the WBC, Povetkin did admit that he had taken Macedonian and to adjust himself to high altitude training in 2015. But I guess what they're saying is that there were still traces in his body, which still is strange on how you can still pass the number of tests he did, and even following still not testing positive with it. But it's still a strange situation. But even to that, sketchy observation there, the WBC also claimed that through all the testing that they did with Povetkin, that there wasn't any traces of any masking agencies in his system for the Macedonian anyway. So, I mean, maybe he's just a clean guy, and a just unfortunate situation for him. So, I don't really want to go on with this really too much. Alexander's clean. He now is forced to face Bermane Stiverne. I still would rather see Stiverne fight Anthony Joshua. But that kind of just makes a more interesting bout on what AJ's next fight is going to be. I would say probably during this winter. So be on the lookout for that. Now, on to Billy Joe Saunders, who had announced this week, or maybe not himself, but it was announced that he is no longer going to be on the undercard of the Canelo Álvarez Liam Smith fight, more specifically fighting Gabriel Rosado, who there were many, or at least long talks that he would be fighting Gabe Rosado. And just like the case with Curtis Stevens, Danny Jacobs, who else am I forgetting? A rematch with Chris Eubank Jr. And, of course, more notably, Gennady Golovkin. Another fallout through this. But before I go on with Billy Joe Saunders, it was announced today that Gabe Rosado will face Willie Monroe on that undercard instead of Billy Joe Saunders. So, little news that was made just a little over an hour ago. But Billy Joe Saunders is, I was actually surprised, at least reminded on how young he was. He's 26 years old. But his quotes is really what is more frustrating taking out of this whole situation. He said he turned down the fight with Gabe Rosado because he felt that it would be a downgrade, or at least a downgrading fight, and that he feels that Gabe Rosado is a world-class journeyman. And so forth. Pretty much just trying to insult his way. Like pretty much he's not worthy of it. But at the same time, when it comes to like these better off fights, like I mentioned before, Danny Jacobs. There was also one with Curtis Stevens that was also being talked about. Pretty much just all these even Willie Monroe, who is now, like I said, facing Gabe Rosado. All these guys were talked about as to being one of his, at least one of his opponents, and that's not going to happen now. He claims with more of the upper echelon fighters that he's not being paid enough, and it's seeming more likely that he's really just holding on to the belt for dear life. I mean, because at some point, you're going to have to make these fights happen. Like, if Gabe Rosado isn't a good fight for you, like, you can't sell yourself to the American public, for one, if you think that that you're worth more than what you really think you are to an American promoter, let alone the fans hardly know who the hell you are. And if you're not going to fight, at least just to give yourself the exposure, okay, like, granted, maybe you feel like you're not getting what you're worth against the Danny Jacobs and Gennady Golovkins. But Gabe Rosado, while it's still, respectively, it's a light touch, but given that Gabe Rosado comes to fight, and maybe it'll be a bit more of a fight than what he can anticipate, but still, that's your chance to become more familiar. You're fighting on the undercard pay-per-view. And one of the best American selling pay-per-view fighters. And it was eventually supposed to be trying to set up a fight with Canelo Álvarez. But now that even looks like it's out the realm. So, what exactly does Saunders, think that he can work out with this career as far as, what does he really think he's worth? Because he's really hurting himself. I mean, shit, I like I said, I can understand, maybe you don't feel like you're getting paid enough with, taking a certain risk of these better fighters. So if Gabe is too much of a journeyman, that just puts that much more pressure on the next light touch, which is going to be a light touch for his next fight. He's not going to want to take some, what fight is he going to take that's going to be worth the money and risk, So, Billy Joe, get your shit together, man. He's becoming a joke. I mean, shit, you would think at least even getting the Eubank Jr. rematch, which I still in a way feel like he would probably win. And it's not like he's really a bad fighter. It's just, I think now he's, and a lot of these new fighters, man, are just feeling so entitled. Like they get a belt and then they feel like they can just price themselves out of it any situation, and that become the A side, that they're the A plus side. So meaning that an A side is just general for all. So just because you're the better fighter and the champion doesn't mean you're automatically guaranteed 4 million plus. Not all the time. Sometimes you can be the A side and getting 2 million, like with many of the instances with Gennady Golovkin. He was probably making about 1 or 2 million on these HBO fights where he was clearly the A side. Didn't want to have to make that huge settlement of trying to get more than what he's worth. I mean, it's exposure in the end. So these guys got to get better business ideas and stop just trying to sell out off one big fight. Sometimes you got to accumulate that money. You can't just keep try to sell out for one major payday. It takes a few million to get to that 5 to 8 million. But it's whatever. Tyson Fury is now seeming to being a bit more reluctant on his rematch with Vladimir Klitschko. Of course, we remember he suffered his ankle injury that postponed the rematch that was supposed to take place this past June to possibly October is what we were told. But Vladimir Klitschko had came out yesterday on his, I want to say Instagram, I can't say specifically. I was just, forwarded the video to Facebook, so that's the way I seen it. Was the fact that Fury was trying to change terms on a contract that was already agreed upon, and now that Vlad feels because of this that he's going to have to take the matter into court. But Vlad did not mention, though, in this statement, though, that he had also wanted to change the drug testing for this fight with VADA. Now, this is coming off the speculation with Tyson Fury about his allegations of possible doping or a possible failed drug test. And again, we come around with this word, allegedly, possibly, nothing definite. Which kind of makes me sick with this, just even trying to look up this whole matter on Tyson Fury. Because everything is alleged, and you're just looking for one definite answer on whether or not does anyone actually have valid proof, because it's a shame that a man's reputation has to be into question off just allegations. But while I'm still not defending his fuckery in this situation, because now it seems that through Vladimir Klitschko's teams is saying that he's trying to demand more money. And that, the ankle injury only came about after the allegations had came out. And when Klitschko had asked about VADA being the drug test. So he feels, maybe there is validity to those accusations. So, with this whole thing, man, it's a shame that for such a fight that was so underwhelming has to be drawn out this far again. It's not even like people were clamoring to really see this again. It was really just in the hopes of maybe, or whether or not it was a fluke or not. Is Klitschko really that much over the hill, or was Tyson Fury, that much stylistically better and confusing for him? So, other than that, there wasn't really that much of an interest from other fans to see this. So, with that being said, it's a matter of shitting or get off the pot for Tyson Fury to me. He's always trying to be, really character savvy by trying to, keep fans guessing about him. Or remember those statements like, I could retire tomorrow and all this other dumb shit. It's getting old, and it's becoming a gimmick now. Are you for real or are you not? And if you're not, vacate these titles, man. It's really not, worth it. All this, it's not worth it. It's not worth the wait. So I personally feel that I feel that Tyson Fury just needs to move on. This shit isn't worth it. No one's really even that excited to see the rematch anyway. So get on with it. And Canelo Álvarez, who brings himself back into the headlines this week, of course, with Gennady Golovkin on the tip of his tongue. This week, he had mentioned that he feels that he can beat Gennady Golovkin and that he would just be another fight. Now, his entire statements goes as far as this. On terms of the September 7, 2017 agreement, he says, "I stand by this, and I can say for my team and myself that we did have conversations with their team the next day. Unfortunately, there's more to making the fight happen than just fighters wanting to fight each other. I want to face Golovkin, and I know that I can beat him. I'm not afraid of any fighter. However, there are terms to be agreed upon, and everyone has to feel comfortable with the terms that that's what's happened here. The negotiations did not go through," Canelo told Mundo on Scene Sports magazines. Canelo, who, if you guys had seen the Margarito fight this past weekend, you guys saw that Canelo Álvarez was in attendance for his brother's fight, and he was looking a little bit agitated watching the fight, and it wasn't just because his brother was pedestrian in the ring of a fighter that's pretty much somewhat already over the hill. There was video shown, at least later on that night, of Canelo Álvarez just being berated by fans, Mexican fans, saying in Spanish, when are you going to fight Golovkin? Hurry up and fight Golovkin. What are you waiting for? Don't be afraid. All this shit. And it's, at first, I had some guys, boxing guys, who claim that, Canelo is just, using Golovkin to keep the buzz around these low-level fights that people don't care to see. And while I can agree to that to a certain extent, I think it's just the fact that, how Mayweather was with Manny Pacquiao. He just cannot escape the questions about Golovkin. But the thing that makes it to a little bit higher degree with Canelo here is that he, deliberately made the move of not fighting Golovkin. It wasn't because, like he said, terms couldn't be agreed upon. It was because outlandish terms were never going to be agreed upon. There was never going to be a 90-10 split. That's utterly outrageous. And, even though I'm sure he wouldn't favor a closer negotiated fight, where was it? I believe it would be 55-45 agreement or in favor for Canelo. It's a little bit closer than he would want. I'm sure 35-65 wouldn't be a problem. Or at least something worked out along those lines. It's when you just flat out say, I'm taking just about everything out of this, like Adrian Broner did with Pacquiao. It's pretty much pricing yourself out. And you didn't have to vacate your title. He had plenty of time to agree upon a date. It's not like, this was something new to you that it just slowly approached on you. You knew about this more than a little under a year. technically, I could say just almost about a year, because once it was announced that Golovkin would fight Lemieux, we pretty much knew, at least Golden Boy put it out there, that the winner of that fight was going to fight the winner of Canelo Cotto. So Golden Boy knew this. He knew this. It's really just excuses. So I guess when it comes to like this phase here of, just saying utter bullshit to the press, this is where it seems like he's just using the buzz of Golovkin, of a possible Golovkin fight in 2017, which is ridiculous. Like I can never imagine going up to someone in the street and be like, "Yo, you really pissed me off. I'm gonna fight your ass in 2 years. Just wait." Or does that sound like some shit like a little brother's like, "Yo, man, when I grow up, I'm gonna kick your ass." Like, this is fucking crazy. Anyway, some more quotes from this article. I'm very confident in my skills and knowledge, and I feel confident that I can beat Golovkin. I respect him as a fighter and what he has been able to accomplish, but that does not faze me. At this point of my career, every fight is important and one that will shape my legacy as a fighter. Facing Golovkin will just be another fight. Well, part of the thing, or part of what makes Canelo such a fan favorite was the fact that he'll just fight anyone, right? And that he's taken fights that many others didn't want. So why does that stop now? Either way, it's just not a good look. You can say that Golovkin is just another fight, but you sure as shit aren't treating it that way. So just face it, man. Just say what it is. He's gonna be my biggest challenge. It's more even than any other fight I've faced, other than fucking Mayweather, which we all knew wasn't gonna be 50-50. But yeah, I'm thinking that while he has the financial advantages that Mayweather had in that fight, Golovkin is going to have the actual advantages in the ring that Mayweather did too. Meaning that he's the favorite to win is, I guess, what I'm trying to say here. It's just fucking stupid. Speaking of Mayweather, I forgot to mention through the Olympic boxing talks that Floyd Mayweather was in attendance for a lot of these Olympic boxing matches. More notably, he was there scouting Shakur Stevenson, and he said he was there just to try to welcome Stevenson to the TMT team. And word of advice to Stevenson: stay away. Please. While it's great to meet a legend and to get high praise from someone of such a meaningful fighter, that probably means a lot. And to that, before I get back to Shakur Stevenson actually getting with TMT, I just want to say that I think that people are jumping the gun a little bit with Shakur Stevenson. While he's a very good fighter, very skillful, and has a great potential ahead of him, I think it's bad for us to just put so much stock and praise him this much before he's even had his gold medal fight, or before he's even turned professional. So when we give, guys that still have a lot to accomplish, when you give them this much praise, it kind of takes away the initiative for them to do better or to be that great, because then you feel, it invites complacency. So I wanted to be sure that people just chill out with that a little bit and, keep him motivated. Don't make him feel like they give him all this accolades, before he's done anything. So just pipe down with that a little bit. Anyway, when it comes to joining the actual TMT team, I would say definitely beware. There's other fighters on there that have not gotten the notoriety that they should have, and also there's really just other fighters that really aren't even that good on Mayweather's label, or labeled team, you know? So, and on top of that, there's the fact that, you know, he's not really, you know, he's not landing really big fights, you know? So just be careful, man. There's other promoters out there. I would definitely talk with Al Heyman, you know, his boss. But yeah, man, you don't want to get with TMT, man. I think he uses a lot of his fighters to, you know, I think he uses himself to try to market his fighters, and that's not how it goes. You know, that's more of a Don King aspect. So just lighten up on that, man. You'll be sharp. You'll be all right, man. Anyway, that's it for me. Kind of extended episode, like I said. My social media links are in the description box below. Other than that, man, keep your hands up. Hands to fireboxing.